You're sitting in the cab, the sun's going down, the harvest window is closing, and the screen in front of you just flashed a code, killed the engine, and told you to call a dealer. You turn the key. Nothing. 40 acres still standing. And the machine you paid for won't move an inch. Here's what nobody told you. That tractor was never fully yours. You bought the iron, but somebody else kept the keys to the software, and they can shut you down from a building 200 miles away. I know because it happened to me on a Tuesday evening in October, sitting in a field outside my own barn, watching daylight burn. But I found the way out. And before this is over, I'm going to hand you a real document, a real law, and a tool you can buy yourself this week that breaks their grip. If you already own one of these locked-up machines and think you're stuck forever, stay with me. This is built for you. Let me take you back to that evening. I'd owned tractors my whole life. My dad ran a row crop operation, and I grew up turning wrenches in a gravel lot before I could drive. I knew engines. I knew hydraulics. I knew what a busted machine sounded like, and I knew how to bring it back to life. So when my newer machine threw a sensor fault and locked itself out midfield, my first instinct was the right one. Pop the hood. Find the bad sensor. Swap it. Move on. I had the part in my hand within the hour, a little sensor, maybe a $40 piece. I bolted the new one on, and the machine still wouldn't run because the part wasn't the problem. The part needed to be calibrated and registered in the software, and that software would only accept the change if a dealer technician plugged in their own special tool and typed in a code. A code I wasn't allowed to have, a tool I wasn't allowed to buy. On the machine I owned outright. That was the moment I understood what had actually been sold to me. Not a tractor, a subscription with wheels. So I called the dealer, and this is where the trap starts to show its teeth. The closest one that could service my machine was over an hour out. They couldn't send a tech for 3 days because it was the middle of harvest and every farmer in the county was in the same ditch I was. When the tech finally came, he plugged in a laptop, clicked a few times, typed the code, and my new $40 sensor came alive. That visit cost me a few $100s in labor and a travel charge before he even touched the machine. But the real bill wasn't on the invoice. The real bill was 3 days of a standing crop and a closing window. The real bill was the gut feeling that I was no longer a farmer who owned his equipment. I was a tenant on my own land, renting permission to use the metal in my own shed. And I started asking a question that changed everything for me. Who decided I wasn't allowed to fix my own machine? Because that wasn't an accident. Somebody built it that way on purpose. Here's the part that took me months to piece together, and it's the part that turned my anger into a plan. The lockout isn't a side effect of modern technology. It's the business model. Think about how these companies actually make money now. The tractor sale is the smallest part of it. The real money is in the decades after the sale, in parts and service and software, where you've got nowhere else to go. If they let you fix your own machine, or let the independent shop down the road do it, that revenue stream dries up. So they built a wall around the repair. They made the diagnostic software dealer only. They made critical parts pair to the machine electronically so a generic replacement won't activate. They turned a wrench job into a service call. And the numbers behind this are bigger than most owners ever realize. The public interest research groups that study this estimate that American consumers and farmers are losing enormous sums every year to repair restrictions, and that the typical household, just in everyday repairs, leaves hundreds of dollars on the table that they could keep if they had the right to fix their own stuff. On a farm where a single combine can cost more than a house, that number isn't hundreds. It's tens of thousands every single season. But here's where it starts to turn, and here's your first real step toward the exit. You are not the only one who figured this out. Farmers across the country started documenting these forced dealer visits, saving the invoices, comparing notes, and those notes ended up in the hands of people with subpoena power. The dealer-only wall that felt like a fact of life turned out to be something a government can investigate and a court can tear down. That's not a dream. That already happened. And I'll show you exactly when. So let me show you how high this thing actually goes, because it's worse than a stubborn dealer and a bad night in a field. For years, When farmers complained, the answer was always the same. They'd point at safety. They'd point at emissions rules. They'd say the software locks were there to protect us, to protect the environment, to keep untrained people from hurting themselves. It sounded almost reasonable. That's how the best traps work. They wear a uniform that looks like it's there for your own good. But the safety story fell apart the second I learned what these machines could actually do from a distance. In the spring of 2022, when Russian forces rolled through southern Ukraine, soldiers looted a dealership in the city of Melitopol. They hauled off combines and tractors worth around $5 million. Big, modern machines loaded onto trucks and hauled hundreds of miles back across the border into Russian-held territory. A clean theft, a fortune in stolen iron, and then those machines went dead. Every one of them. Bricked remotely, from far away, before the thieves could ever put them to work. The dealer back in Ukraine could see exactly where the stolen equipment had been taken because the machines were still reporting their location, and the software was shut down so completely that the thieves were left with $5 million of green paperweights. Now stop and think about what that proved. They told us for years that the lockout was about safety and emissions. But the truth is, the machine can be tracked anywhere on Earth and switched off on command. That isn't a safety feature, that's a leash. And the same leash that disabled a stolen combine in Russia is the leash bolted to the machine sitting in your shed right now. The only difference is whose hand is on it, and what they decide counts as a reason to pull. That's the moment the whole thing clicked for me. The lockout was never really about protecting me. It was about control. And once I saw it as control, I started looking for who profits from holding the leash and who's been fighting to cut it. If you want the full picture of how this system was built, who built it, and exactly how to dismantle it for your own operation, I put everything I learned into a book called Fixed or Owned. It covers the legal fights, the diagnostic tools, the owner workarounds, and the decisions I wish I'd made years earlier, all of it laid out for the farmer who's done waiting on a dealer. You'll find it linked in the description below. Because there was a fight, a real one, with names and dates and documents. And the more I dug, the more I realized how close they came to burying it. So here's where the resistance started, and here's the first document I want you to remember. Right to repair activists had been hammering on this for years, and the heat finally got high enough that the biggest manufacturer in the game decided it needed to look like it was solving the problem before a government forced it to. On January 8th, 2023, the largest farm equipment maker signed a memorandum of understanding with the American Farm Bureau Federation, a formal, signed agreement. On paper, it was a victory. The company promised to give farmers and independent repair shops access to the tools, the manuals, the diagnostics, and the software they needed to fix their own machines. They shook hands in front of cameras. The headline said the right to repair fight was over. I read that, and for about a day I felt relief. I thought finally somebody listened. Then I read the fine print. And I want you to hear what was hiding in it, because this is the trick they pull again and again. That memorandum was not a law. It could not be enforced in any court. It carried no penalty if the company simply didn't follow through. And buried in the language was a line where the Farm Bureau agreed to encourage state affiliates to back off from pushing actual right to repair legislation. Read that again. In exchange for a promise with no teeth, the farmers' own biggest organization agreed to help slow down the real laws that would have had teeth. That's the villain showing its hand. They didn't just build the trap. They wrote the terms of the truce, and they got the people who were supposed to represent us to sign off on language that protected the trap from the only thing that scared it: real, enforceable law. But the trick only works if everyone stays quiet and trusts the handshake. And not everybody did. Therefore, the fight didn't die in that conference room. It moved to the one place the manufacturers couldn't control with a signed memo: the state houses. And one state refused to play along. That's where the door cracked open. In Colorado, the farmers and the repair advocates didn't take the handshake. They went for the law. And on a spring day in 2023, the governor of Colorado signed House Bill 23-1011, the Consumer Right to Repair Agricultural Equipment Act. It took effect on January 1st, 2024. This is the document that changes the game, and I want you to understand exactly why. Unlike that toothless memorandum, this is a real state law with real force behind it. It requires the manufacturer to provide owners and independent repair shops the same parts, the same tools, the same diagnostic software, and the same documentation that the dealer's own technicians get, not a watered-down version, the same access. And if they refuse, that's now a violation a farmer can actually act on. For the first time, a farmer in that state could legally demand the keys to his own machine. The wall the manufacturer spent years building, the wall the Farm Bureau memo tried to protect, ran straight into a law that didn't care about handshakes. And here's the part that matters even if you don't live in that state. Once one state proves it can be done, the dam starts to leak. Other states started drafting their own versions. The pressure that the memorandum was designed to release started building right back up. The manufacturers learned that their truce didn't hold because a signed promise to a trade group means nothing to a legislature that's heard from angry farmers. But a state law and a leaking dam still take time, and you've got a machine sitting in your shed right now that doesn't care about the slow grind of politics. So, let me get specific, because this next part is for the man who's watching this thinking, that's fine for the future, but I bought my trap years ago and I'm still stuck in it tonight. If you already own one of these lockdown machines, this section is for you, and I want you to lean in, because I was exactly where you are, and I'm going to tell you what actually worked. First thing, stop assuming the dealer is your only door. There is a whole underground of owners who refuse to wait for permission, and they built a parallel world of fixes. On the forums and the farm equipment subreddits, you'll find threads where guys post the exact procedures, the part numbers, the workarounds for getting a machine running again without the dealer's blessing. I learned more in a week of reading those threads than I learned in years of trusting the service desk. Second thing, and this is the one most owners never hear, the manufacturer's own diagnostic software is not as locked away as they let you believe. The big maker actually sells a customer version of its dealer diagnostic program. It's a subscription, and yes, they charge for it, but it exists and you can buy it as a regular owner. With it, on many machines, you can read the fault codes yourself, see what the machine is actually complaining about, and in a lot of cases, clear the code and get moving instead of sitting 3 days waiting for a tech. The dealers don't advertise this. Of course they don't. Every owner who buys that subscription is an owner who stops calling them for the easy money jobs. But it's there, and the existence of it is half buried on purpose. Third thing, document everything, and I mean everything. Save every invoice, photograph every screen that demands a dealer. Write down the date the machine went down and the date the tech finally showed up, and put a dollar figure on what that downtime cost you in lost work. I started keeping a folder. And that folder turned out to be ammunition, because the regulators building cases against these companies are hungry for exactly that kind of record from real owners. Your bad invoice isn't just a grievance. It's evidence in a fight that's already moving. Fourth thing, and this is the long game that pays the most. Start looking hard at what your machine is actually worth and what the alternatives cost, because that's a step toward the exit too. And that brings me to something happening in auction lots and farm sales all over this country that the manufacturers absolutely do not want you to notice. The older machines are coming back, the ones from before all this software. The mechanical tractors from the late 1970s and the 1980s, the ones with no computer to lock you out, the ones a man can fix in his own shed with a wrench and a manual. Those machines are selling for premium money now, and prices on clean, low-hour examples have climbed hard over the last several years. Farmers are paying up, sometimes paying more than they would for something a couple decades newer, because a tractor you can actually fix is worth more than a tractor that can hold you hostage. Think about what that tells you. The market itself, real buyers spending real money, has decided that the right to repair has a dollar value, and that value is going up. The lockout doesn't just cost you in repair bills. It poisons the resale value of your machine, because the next buyer knows he's buying the same lease you're trying to escape. The manufacturer sold you on technology and let you discover years later that the technology is exactly what's dragging your trade-in value down. So you've got 3 moves available right now today on a machine you already own. Get into the owner communities and learn the workarounds. Buy your own copy of the diagnostic software and stop renting permission to read your own fault codes. And keep that folder of invoices and downtime, because the more owners who can show what this cost them, the harder the case gets to walk back. None of that requires you to buy a single new machine. All of it loosens the grip. But there's one more piece, and it's the biggest one, and it's the thing that finally made me feel like I wasn't fighting alone in a field at sundown anymore. Because while I was saving invoices and reading forums, somebody with a lot more power than me was building a case with the same evidence. And what they found, and what they're now demanding, is the real way out. That's where this is going. Here's the finale, and this is the part I wish somebody had handed me that night in the field, because it would have saved me years of feeling powerless. On January 15th, 2025, the Federal Trade Commission, the country's top consumer protection agency, joined by the Attorneys General of Illinois and Minnesota, filed a lawsuit against the largest farm equipment maker in America. Not a memo, not a handshake with a trade group. A federal lawsuit with the full weight of the government behind it. And I read that complaint, the actual filing, and I want to tell you what's in it, because it confirms everything I felt in my gut that Tuesday evening and could never prove on my own. The government's filing lays it out in plain language. It accuses the company of forcing farmers into a dealer network for repairs by withholding the fully functional software tool that the repair actually requires. It describes how the company kept the real diagnostic capability locked to its dealers, so that farmers and independent shops simply could not complete certain repairs, no matter how skilled they were, no matter that they owned the machine outright. It describes the exact trap I fell into, the part you can install but cannot activate, the code you cannot get, the tech you have to wait for and pay for. Everything I lived, written down by federal investigators as the basis of an antitrust case. And here is why that's your exit and not just a headline. The very fact that this complaint exists with these specific accusations is a document you can point to. When a dealer or a manufacturer tells you that the lockout is just how it has to be, for safety, for emissions, for your own good, you now have the United States government on record saying otherwise. You have a federal agency stating that this was about funneling you into dealer service and protecting a revenue stream, not protecting you. So here's exactly what I did with all of it and what you can do this week. I want you to walk through the same door I found. Start by understanding that the right to repair is no longer a hope. It's law in at least one state already, with that Colorado Act in force, and it's a live federal case everywhere else. That shift in the ground is real, and it's recent, and you're watching it happen. Then take the concrete steps. Go get the manufacturer's customer diagnostic subscription for your machine so you can read and clear your own codes instead of waiting on a tech. Get into the owner forums and download the procedures other farmers have already mapped out for your exact model. And keep that folder of invoices and downtime, because the more owners who can show what this cost them, the harder the case gets to walk back. And then make the bigger decision with clear eyes. When you're ready to buy your next machine, you walk onto that lot knowing what the lockout is really worth, which is less than they want and less every year. You look at the older mechanical iron that's climbing in value precisely because nobody can lock you out of it. You look at the independent and the European builders who are watching this fight and competing for the farmer who's done being controlled. You stop being a captive customer and you become a buyer with leverage, because now you know the one thing they hoped you'd never figure out. The software lock was never a feature you needed. It was a fence they built around your wallet, and the fence is coming down. That's the way out. It was always there. It was buried in fine print. hidden behind a handshake that was designed to keep you quiet, kept alive by a handful of farmers and advocates in state houses who refused to take the toothless deal. And now it's a signed law and a federal lawsuit and a diagnostic subscription you can buy with a credit card. The exit exists, you just had to be shown the door. So here's what I really want you to walk away with. You are not a tenant on your own land. You never were. The machine in your shed is yours. The iron is yours. The right to fix it is yours. And for the first time in years, the law and the truth are finally lining up behind that simple fact. You're the kind of owner who buys a thing to keep it, to run it, to hand it down, and to fix it yourself when it breaks at sundown in a closing harvest window. That's not stubbornness. That's the whole reason a man owns his own equipment instead of renting it, and nobody in a tower 200 miles away gets to take that from you with a line of code. Now I want to hear from you, and I'm asking you straight, because this audience reads quiet, and I want you to break that habit tonight. Tell me about the worst dealer invoice you ever got handed, the one that made you sit back and ask who decided you weren't allowed to fix your own machine. Put it in the comments. Tell me the model that left you stranded. Tell me what the downtime really cost you, and tell me what county or what country you're watching from. I read them, and so do the other owners who found their way here. If you're done renting what you already paid for, subscribe and stand with the owners taking their iron back, because there's strength in the count, and the people on the other side are counting too. Next time I'm going to break down exactly which independent and European machines are being built right now for farmers who refuse the leash, and which dealers near you are quietly stocking the parts and the tools the big makers don't want in your hands. You'll want to see that list before you buy your next tractor. Stay with me, and let's get the rest of the way out together. Because here's the last thing I learned, and it's the truth that ties all of it together. They were never selling you iron. They were selling you dependence, dressed up as innovation, and they bet you'd never notice the difference. But you noticed. You're here. And the moment a man stops asking permission to fix what he owns, the whole trap loses its grip. So go pull your own codes, save your own invoices, and walk onto that lot next time knowing exactly who holds the leash now. It's you. It was always supposed to be you. That toolkit I promised, the farm equipment self-repair, that's where I take it next, inside the circle. This video gave you the overview. In there you get the full walkthrough, and you can ask me your own question, and a real person, me, answers you myself. You won't be doing it alone, folks, like you are already inside. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen, and you can cancel any time.